a lot of people don't want to become mothers, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm certainly never going to be the person who says like, you have to be a mom. But I think a lot of the times people say they don't want to because they see how hard it is. It is challenging, but like it can be so fun. The longer that I've been a mother, the more confident I am in like who I am, what matters to me. I don't care about offending people. And I care so much more about living my life with integrity in a genuine way and with a whole lot of fun with people that I actually want to spend time with.
Big fucking dreams. All right, then. You got this.
Hey, big fucking dreamers. So pumped to be here with you today. We have a very special guest. She is a person that has taken so many different roles in my life. She's been a friend. She's been my mentor. She's been my coach. I think I've been her mentor at some points. We've been peers. She is an expert in matrescence. She is a motherhood and career coach. I'm so excited to welcome Andrea Bombino to the podcast. Dre, welcome to the Big Fucking Dreams podcast. Finally, Hannah, I'm so excited to be here. I feel like this has been a long time coming. I feel like for like 2 years, I've been like, do you want to, I would just pop in my toxic fatal flaws, like inviting people to do things or say things and then just never following up. I'm like, we should hang out.
But I like it, don't respond.
I love it. I love it. Look, we're here today, so it happened eventually. It's just like when the time is right. We got it. We got here. So today we're really talking about matrescence. It was interesting. I was talking to a friend about that, a friend who is a mother who has a 16-year-old. And I was saying that I was interviewing you and we were having this conversation and she was like, what is matrescence? And I explained it to her and she was like, I've never, ever heard of that. So I'm going to hand it to you over to the expert just to explain to the audience, what is the definition and the process of matrescence? So I will say, super common that most people, the first time they hear the word matrescence, have zero idea about the word or the concept and what it entails, regardless of whether they're a mom or they're not, or they're a man. It doesn't matter. It is a word that is starting to gain in popularity, tremendously in popularity in 2026. But the concept, matrescence, is really the developmental transition into motherhood. And the woman who coined the term, Dana Raphael, was an American anthropologist. And she coined this term in the 1970s when she was working with women. She also coined the word doula. And doula stuck, but matrescence kind of went by the wayside until about a little over 10 years ago when Dr. Orly Athen at Columbia University in New York City and her team of her students in the psychology department kind of unearthed the term again and brought it back into the forefront to describe this developmental transition. And the reason why it was so top of mind for them is because mothers were presenting to Dr. Orly at her practice and they were showing signs of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and medical professionals were really quick to point to what their feelings were around maternal ambivalence and just like the stress of all of this change as psychological disorders. And Dr. Athen and her students were taking a look at like, well, what if becoming a mother is this profound developmental transition that really encompasses a change of identity, a change of role and scope within our environment, within our culture, within our society. It's a physical change. It's a psychological change. Like it encompasses so much of who we are, and yet it's a really under-recognized developmental transition. So similar to adolescence, which hundreds of years ago was not recognized as a developmental period, matrescence is very similar. It is this stage of becoming. A lot of people in the matrescence field would also argue it's a stage of unbecoming, a shedding of what no longer serves you, kind of uncovering who you are becoming, what wants to stick or what you want to bring forward. And it touches everybody a bit differently. There are different domains of matrescence, and for some people, they will feel it the most from a physical perspective, where like their sense of self was so tied to what they look like, how they felt in their body. Pregnancy and birth can change that. Postpartum can change that. And that can feel really resonant for some people. For others, it might be the way that their relationships change with their own mother, with their friends who are moms or who aren't moms yet, or who might never be mothers. It can change their relationship with their partner. It can change their careers and the way that they feel about ambition. That's a lot of the work that I do is in that space. The way you feel about your finances, the way you feel about productivity, all of that can be a part of that matrescence and that transition. And I think that the biggest mistake is people think matrescence is this one moment in time. You get pregnant, you pop out a baby, that's matrescence, you're done. But the reality is, it's similar to like, you don't just wake up one morning, 13 years old, and your parents hand you the keys to a car, the deed to a house, a mortgage, and say, hey, you're an adult now. You know what to do. Like, no way. We give teenagers so much grace, right? Whether they're moody, whether they're acting out or acting up, whatever the case is, we're like, oh, they're a teenager, they're going through something, but we don't do the same for moms. And that's why I'm so passionate about making matrescence more mainstream and talking about it all the time, because when we start to understand that this is something that for some people, they start to feel it in the preconception phase, during pregnancy, at childbirth. For others, they might not even feel it until after the baby is born or even like a year, 2 years down the line. But it is ongoing, it is cyclical, and it's seasonal too. You might feel it at different times more deeply than at others, depending on your support systems or your lack of support systems around you as well.
Why is it, do you think, that we don't recognize the intense period of change in society?
Well, that's a loaded question. If I had to kind of like streamline into one thing, I would say like in Western culture, we live in a capitalistic society that really values production. And if we were to really value this transition and this process, women would probably slow down or need to slow down. And that is not something that is celebrated in our culture. And I think that if you look at a lot of indigenous cultures or other places around the world where pregnancy, childbirth, and the postpartum period are really sacred, there is a massive component of slowing down to be with yourself, to be with your baby, to learn this new role. And our society, most Western culture, is just not built for that. Whether it's a lack of paid parental leave for both birthing and non-birthing parents, whether it is the extraordinary cost of childcare, whether it is the celebration of like how fast can you bounce back, whether that's in your career, in your body, in your relationships, like those are the things that in the past have really been celebrated. And so I just don't think that our society and Western culture is really set up for that. An example would be, I remember when I was pregnant with my daughter, who is now she's about to be 6 in less than 2 weeks. And I was living in Melbourne. My mom was in the US. She's like, I'll come over when you have the baby and I'll stay so that, for the first 40 days, like you don't get out of bed, I'll cook, I'll clean, and, I'll take care of you so you can take care of the baby. And I was like, I don't need that. Come on. Like, we have this culture where we have been taught, especially our generation, to be so independent, to not rely on anybody. And so even though my mother, who is Colombian, this was her way of saying, I'm here for you. I'm here to support you. I want for you to have this really soft landing into motherhood and mothering. And I turned it down because I was like, no, I've got this. If I can, sell multi-million-dollar deals on Wall Street, this is going to be a piece of cake, which was not the case.
Yeah, this like the hyper independence that almost like needing a soft landing is somehow almost a bit shameful in our society. And I just look at my kind of negative viewpoint as to why matrescence isn't recognized is that like historically we don't really recognize the experiences of women.
100%.
And it's like
medically, we don't do the research. Most medical research is on men. What is the statistic? Like 98%, something shocking like that.
Yeah, when our bodies are so much more complex and we have a way different hormonal cycle and we can, give birth and then go through menopause. And this is why I love the work that you're doing to bring this and especially to bring this into the workplaces where this is kind of like the intersection of the work that I do. But I do want to talk a bit about ambition and changing ambition. And I have a lot of friends with children, and an interesting thing that I've observed is that even my friends who have these big careers, a lot of them have said like, I would actually, like to pause work right now and be a stay-at-home mom. This is mainly people in the States too, who don't really have the option to have paid leave as much as some of our European or Australian counterparts, like we get the benefit of here. But I was a bit surprised that of the changes that have gone on where women who have been historically extremely driven by career have gone through like this stage and then said, okay, I do want to take a step back. And instantly when I heard that, I don't know, like one of my reactions was almost like fear of like, what is this going to do? Or what is this process going to do around my identity of being, this ambitious person? Like, is that somehow going to derail that? And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that in your coaching practice, like how this comes up.
Absolutely. The whole reason I even started my coaching practice is because I really struggled with this question myself when I first got pregnant. Even though I know how babies are made, and even though my husband and I went into this, like what we thought were very like open-eyed, or in an open-eyed manner, the moment I found out I was pregnant, I panicked. I really, really panicked. And I had just gotten promoted the day before. And I was like, what have I done? I have just like crushed my career. Even the day before when I found out that I was pregnant, I went home, I said to my husband, I got the promotion. And then I said, and if I'm not pregnant this month, like, let's put this on ice for at least 6 months while I learn this new role. And the reality is, and I've said this a lot over the last few years, is that pregnancy is the shortest ramp-up time for a career change and a skill set change that will last a lifetime. And that can really be beneficial. I actually think that becoming a mother and becoming a parent is an amazing opportunity for leadership growth and for evolving a skill set. It teaches you a lot about yourself. It's a really eye-opening experience when you have been somebody who feels so competent, who feels like they have the answers, who feels like they can control so much. And so many of the women that I've worked with over the years, like they are those competent women who are performers, who are high achievers, who are used to controlling everything. And when you become pregnant, and when you become a parent, so much is outside of your control. And I think that that is what is so confronting for so many women who are very career driven. And from an ambition perspective, I don't think ambition goes away completely, not for a majority of the women I've spoken to over the years. Like, it just changes, it shifts. I think that priorities become a lot clearer. I know with your clients, you do a lot of work around values. Like, your values just become really crisp. And all of a sudden it starts to be like, well, that career that I've had, that I've built, that I've spent so much time and effort on is no longer in alignment with those values. And so I might still be ambitious. I probably am still ambitious, but I don't want to work at this insane pace that my work, my paid work, takes up 200% of my brain space and leaves nothing, leaves me depleted for my family, for my husband, for my interactions with friends and my community. It just shifts, it changes. And that's not to say that it's a bad thing. So many of the women I work with over the years, like they become moms, what they want becomes more clear. They will either say, I want to double down on my career, but I want to orchestrate it so it looks different. And so they will just really cut out all the bullshit and they will focus on the parts that really matter, and they become really efficient and effective, and they're still great at their jobs, but they might care a little bit less, if that makes sense. Like they're more of like, well, good enough is good enough. They're still hitting numbers and they're still achieving and they're still getting promoted, but they might kind of like take a step back from how much it matters or how much of that might be their identity. I work with other women who leave their corporate jobs and they go and start their own businesses. They design a business and a workplace that works for them in this stage of life. And I've also worked with women who take career breaks and pauses. And while they're on this pause, they're not like baking sourdough and making their own clothing. Like, I mean, some of them do make sourdough, but like they will also invest in other skills. They start networking. They're meeting other moms for coffee. They're talking about big business ideas. They are building relationships. They're building community. When you become a parent, that is a full-time job. Even if you are not with your children all the time, You still have to take calls from daycare to pick them up when they're sick. You still worry when they are sick and you're not there. You still are getting up in the middle of the night. Like there's so much that encompasses it. There's so much brain space that is taken up by actually parenting, this verb, this it's a whole thing, right? It's a job in and of itself, but it's unpaid labor. And so I think for women, it's not about ambition like crashing and burning and going by the wayside. I really believe that it is just a sharpening of like what that ambition looks like. And sometimes it's saying, I know what I want to do. I've got these really, really big, ambitious dreams. Right now, in this exact moment, it might not be the time, but I can put that on hold for a few weeks or a few months or a few years. And I think that is the part that's actually the hardest, is that waiting period where you feel, especially in the day and age of social media and how much information is available at any given time, where we feel like others are passing us by and they're doing the things that we want to be doing and that we either feel incapable of doing from a timing perspective or incapable of doing because you're just exhausted, or because maybe you have kids that are special needs or have all these other things going on, or maybe you lack a local support, like a physical support structure and system. And all of those things can really impact our ambition and how it kind of shows up in this particular stage and season of our lives.
I'm really interested in what you said around the impatience, because it almost sounds like an acceptance. And I think with a lot of the work, I don't specialize in motherhood at all, but burnout is like a huge area of my work and a huge practice. And a lot of people do come to me with burnout. And I know for me, even when I had burnout, there was like this shame and longing to be what I used to be and to perform at that level. But then there are a lot of realistic constraints. And even in my current business, I don't work more than 35, 40 hours a week, like pretty much ever. And that's something that keeps me in a place where I don't have to go into burnout again. So the acceptance piece around this, around the impatience and around changing and around being in the season that you're in, like how you coach women to accept their current capacity and where they're at. And if you see resistance to that.
I absolutely agree with that. I think that most of the moms that I work with, like they come to me because they realize that something is not working. Usually they have experienced clinical burnout, or they are very much on the verge of it. Most of the women I work with have also engaged in therapy before. And so they've realized like they've done certain work from a psychological and emotional perspective on their past. And now they're trying to look at the future. And I think that when they become a mom, and if they do have any time to pause, so any form of leave from paid work, they start to think about the last few years. And they start to realize for themselves, Jesus, if I felt this way before I became a mom already with work, and now they've got this new little human or humans, how am I supposed to do both of these things? How am I supposed to be present or take care of these living beings and also perform the way that I used to perform? And so I don't think that a lot of them come to me looking for acceptance of like this new stage and phase of their lives. My hope is that they get there. My hope is that they find ways, and we work on that in terms of like understanding, like, what is it that they really want? What are their values today? Measuring success by these new values, not by the old values. One of the hardest things to kind of come to terms with is like all of the things you were able to do because of the independence, the physical independence, not having to tell somebody I'm leaving at this time and there's a bottle in the fridge, or, you know, there are diapers here or there, or like coordination. Like it used to just be, oh, I feel like going for a walk. I'm going to go. I'm leaving. Take the keys, phone, wallet, bye. Like that's it. And so from an acceptance perspective, it's a lot of trying to untangle who they are today, what they've learned about success in the past, what it looked like in the past. What do they want to keep? and bring forward? What do they want to leave behind? And what is that future state of the life that they want to design for themselves and that they want to build that is going to feel sustainable? Because I think, again, if I go back to like the women in our generation, we have been working so hard professionally for so long. Women are becoming mothers at like later in life than ever before. And so when you are entering motherhood and you've already got 10 plus years of professional experience behind you, you have a really clear sense of self. And so much of that sense of self is built on your performance around paid work. And the reality of being a parent is that no one is sending a company-wide email to spruik your accomplishments. No one is there being like, oh, Dre, cleaned up 3 vomits last night in the middle of the night and managed to not get it on the cream-colored carpet. Like, no one cares, right? The best case scenario is that my husband is going to like be in the trenches with me, and every now and then randomly he'll look at me and he'll like stare deeply into my eyes, and I'm like, is he going to say something really romantic? And he'll be like, you're a really good mom. And like, that is like mind-blowing. But for me, even though I've been doing this work for over 5 years, even though I've coached hundreds of women one-on-one and spoken to thousands in group settings, I still struggle with that acceptance because there's so much that I want to do. But when I go back to my values, and right now in this season of my life, what is really important to me is to be able to pick my daughter up from school a few times a week and walk to the ice cream shop and sit and have a chat where she talks to me about like the perils of the playground and the drama. And so it's like I could be doing that, or I can be going back to my business plan and doing so much more. And it's not that I don't want to, it's that right now I'm like, this is the season that I'm in, and it's a constant practice and acceptance. And that's what I work with my clients on too, is like recognizing it is an imperfect practice. And it's about really trying to live your life in a way that is aligned with what you actually want. If I get diagnosed tomorrow with a terminal illness, I don't want to regret the last 5-6 years that I've been a mom, because I feel like I've done the wrong things in the sense that I've focused my time in areas that don't matter to me. Like if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, I'd be really happy with the effort that I've put in, knowing that it has not been perfect in any realm of my life, but that I have at least have challenged the norms of what I thought being a good mother looked like, what I thought being a good employee looked like, what I thought being a good leader looked like, and that I'm just showing up in an authentic way. And I will say, with the women that I work with, like, not all of them work in environments where they can show up authentically. And not all of them work for employers who are supportive of the fact that they are mothers, or are supportive of the fact that their ambition looks different. But I think the biggest thing is like, we can't make assumptions for ourselves until we are living it. And employers should not make assumptions on women either, because again, like I see some women who become moms and they want to go for that promotion. They want that big project. They want to travel more. Again, it sharpens what their interests are and what they feel they're actually really good at. And they want to double down on that. And there's nothing wrong in either direction, as long as we are trying to live a life that is actually aligned. And I think that that is going to be the thing that really distinguishes a career that is just built with burnout, like built in burnout, versus where we can really start to see and acknowledge the behaviors of burnout, or that lead to burnout, in advance, so that we can kind of, take a detour and circumvent that, or put an end to that constant pattern in our careers.
So like what I'm really hearing is coming back to intention, and have you actually done the planning? And for you, it's like, okay, in this season of life, picking your daughter up, going to the ice cream shop, like that is, your ideal life right now, and the season of life. And I think that sometimes I talk a lot about this in my course, Life and Work Transformation with Values, is that like values do involve trade-offs. And I don't think that it's something that people talk about a lot, and that, in a season of life where there's intense brain development going on with your child and their attachment style is forming, the trade-off could be that you might not build as big of a business, or you might not, get that promotion, or you might not make another 100K in an extra 100K over 3 years. But intentionally designing that, I have found, makes the sacrifices a bit easier. And even in my business, like really intentionally looking at the hours I work, the activities that I do, like not burning out and seeing like I probably could have grown my business to like double in size by now, but I've intentionally chose to like take it really slowly because I don't want to get sick again. It's not to say, like you said, it's not to say that it doesn't suck at times. Like, yeah, I know what I'm sacrificing. Like, I'm sacrificing like an international trip a year. I'm probably sacrificing like, an additional 300K a year. But is that worth it to me? Like, yeah, it is. It actually is worth it to me to be healthy.
I agree with you. And I think like admitting that and talking about that like out loud is actually really important for other women to hear. And I try to be really honest about that because over the years, people will say to me, "Oh, you really look like you've got it all together. Like you're excelling in your professional life. Like you seem to have this great relationship with your kids. You and your husband still go out on dates. Like you have hobbies. You've got it all together." And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. It is not without sacrifice. Every single day, I have to choose how I'm going to spend my time. And it doesn't mean that I'm always thrilled with those choices. But again, I'm going back to like the values of right now. And my husband and I do this like, I don't want to call it a goal setting, or it's more of like a vision setting for like the year. Like we pick 3 words, like what are the words for our family that we want to kind of live by and embody this year? And then we also take it as like individuals. And it's really important to us to reassess those family values. And so like quarterly, we will talk about those things. It's not sexy, but it's really helpful to also know we're on the same page. And so when my husband, who is an entrepreneur who runs his own business, says to me, today that next week he's got to fly to Brisbane for the day to present at a conference that he's just been invited to be a key speaker last minute. And I look at my calendar and I'm like, all right, I've got all these different things. It's like, well, let's sit down. Is this really important to you, Matt? Yes. Okay. Here are the reasons why it's important to him and to his business. All right. Well, I've got these things. Can I get a babysitter? Can I get some extra support? Can I take off from work? Can I move some meetings around? Like, what's important? What does my daughter have on? Like, our son isn't even 2 yet. He's not in school. He's not in daycare right now. We're really lucky to have local family support. And so there is a constant trade-off. And so I could say to Matt, hey, it's not a good time for you to go. But if he's saying that's really important to him in this moment, it's like, all right, well, then what do we need to do? Where do we need to flex to make things happen? And the same thing goes if it's on the flip side. So if something comes up for me, it's like, all right, how important is this to me? Like, is this a once in a lifetime opportunity? Do I think that it can happen again? Like, there's so much, it's endless. And I think that when you have worked in professional settings where that performance is really celebrated, that going above and beyond is really celebrated, you think you have to replicate that in your own business as an entrepreneur. And I actually think like being an entrepreneur is a long game. It's like ultra marathon running. You have to prep in advance for the actual race. And then you show up on game day and it's not just the physical aspect, it's the mental aspect. And then after you actually run your race, it's the recovery and the rest, and building that into your business is so key. And I used to joke when I started my business, my husband would ask me at the end of the night, like we'd be like sitting down together, 9 o'clock at night, and he'd be like, so your to-do list all done for the day? Like you're all done? And I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. The to-do list is endless. I've got Trello boards of like Trello boards. Like this is not, I can do a million things at any given time, but my time is not infinite and my headspace is not infinite. And if I am doing all of these things, when you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And so for me, it's like if I say yes to rebuilding my website for the 75th time, on a Tuesday night, I'm saying no to painting for 2 hours. And when I think about like what's actually going to be more relaxing to me, what is actually going to allow me to show up in a way that feels really aligned to who I am and how I want to show up for my family and for my clients, it's going to be the art practice that's actually going to do more for me than working on the website. But it doesn't make it easy.
I want to talk a little bit about like your hobbies, because I feel like you are someone that has a lot of hobbies. You have an art practice. You're always doing, I don't know, like really interesting things. And every time I speak to you, there's kind of like another little thing going on. And I want to talk about the prioritization of that even in motherhood, because you've got, you're working a very demanding corporate job. You're also running your business. You're a mother of two, and then you're still making time to do watercolors. And I want to hear a bit about your process.
The focus on hobbies for me has been really intentional. I am somebody who growing up, like as a kid, was super creative and it was really celebrated. Like my mom really encouraged it. Like she put me in classes for drawing and painting. And I remember taking like AP art history when I was in high school and studying art history when I was in college. And I've just always really been interested in art and history and reading. And I feel like it wasn't until I entered my professional life where none of those things were really celebrated. And I let myself become fully consumed with my career or by my career and by paid work. And so much of how I measured my success was based on like, how high could I go in terms of my earnings? Like how much money? I remember when I hit 200K in earnings and I was 25 and my dad is a CPA, like was doing my taxes and he's like, this can't be right. And I was like, what? Oh, is it weird? Is that weird? Like, oh, okay. And I was so praised by family and at work for these financial accomplishments. And so I never really paused to like have hobbies like as an adult. And when I became a mom, something that I had loved for years really fell by the wayside, which was reading. And that was because like by the time I'd get into bed, I was so exhausted. I could not keep my eyes open. And then my husband got me a Kindle and I was like, I'm going to read every single night before bed, the same way that I've done for my whole life, pretty much. And I don't care if it's 5 pages or 50 pages. And I still do that now. And so my daughter's about to be 6. And so that's been a practice that I started when she turned 1. That's when I was able to actually like go back into that. And then when my daughter was a year and a half, I found out that I was pregnant unexpectedly. And when I say unexpectedly, I mean unplanned, which is wild for a control freak. And this was like as we were getting ready to move from Melbourne and we were moving back to the US in literally 2 days. And when I got to the US, it was 2022. The US was still, dealing with the run-on effects of COVID in terms of not having enough medical providers and having a backlog of medical appointments for their existing patients. And so I couldn't find a doctor to take me. And it was like one thing after another. And I was looking in the US to just like get a basic confirmation of pregnancy and look for maternal health care. And I couldn't find anybody who would take me. And at the last minute, I found someone. And I had a really, really negative experience because it turns out that I'd had a miscarriage. And the experience rocked my world. Whereas my pregnancy with my daughter and the birth experience itself was so empowering, the pregnancy loss experience was the total opposite. I blamed myself. I felt so disconnected from my body. I didn't have the words, like the actual vocabulary to talk about my feelings and the effect that it had on me. I feel like no one around me really knew what to say or how to support me. And I had to go in for a DNC as Roe v. Wade was being overturned in multiple states in the US. And it was arguably like the worst experience of my life, like the worst like week. And that in itself, like even with pregnancy loss, like that is also a version of matrescence. And I didn't have that understanding at that time. And I really thought that I just needed to like move forward and I couldn't. I was having a hard time readjusting to the US. I was having a hard time making sense of the pregnancy loss experience. I was resentful of my husband because his life just continued on. And I was like, this is insane. Like, how can you just act like nothing has changed? I was resentful of my business because I had quit my corporate job to go all in my coaching business. And this happened in the middle of it. And I was like, I couldn't be present with my clients. I was trying to work with corporate businesses and it just felt so inauthentic. And I was just exhausted. And my daughter had been given a little like cheap watercolor set from like the dollar store. And I sat down with her and we started doodling. And there was just something that felt so right about, picking up the paintbrush with zero expectation and no measurement of success. And it wasn't that I was going to show anybody what I had made. And, she's sitting there by then, she's like nearly 2, and she's just like happy to see the colors. And I'm happy to see the colors on the paper. And there was something about it that just really healed this like little piece of me. And so shortly after, we moved up to the Hudson Valley, and I sought out local art classes. And I enrolled in I think it was like an 8-week session where every single Sunday I'd go to this local shop every Sunday from 10 a.m. until noon. And I was always the youngest one by a lot. And I would sit there, and it was usually all women. And I would just listen to their stories, and they would talk about their lives and things that like they felt were trivial that I just found so much beauty in, like, having a hobby, bird watching. Or one person who, he was like the only man who ever came to class. He was a local reporter for the local newspaper, but he also was an avid fly fisherman. And he used to make his own flies for bait. And then he started painting them. And I just, like, there was just something that was just so magical about this to me, and so magical about mostly women coming together week after week with zero expectation to just paint together and just witness each other and to share stories and encouragement. And I remember when I told them when I was pregnant again and with my son, who's now like a year and a half, it was just, the hobby was not even so much about the painting as it was about the community, as it was about the connection. And so, yeah, since like 2023, probably, painting, collaging, junk journaling, creative journaling, art journaling, that whole thing like has become so big for me. Wherever I am, wherever I'm living in the world, whether it's in New York or Italy or Melbourne, like I seek out groups of people that are coming together to do these things because it means so much. It's not about showing my work. I don't really care about that. I don't care whether it's good or if anybody likes it. Like, I do it for me, doing something with my hands, and the neuroscience behind doing things with your hands and making things with your hands shows like how it lowers cortisol so much. Like 15 minutes of doing something with your hands, like just using a glue stick and scissors, is like medicine. For me, it's like medicine for the soul. So it is the thing that is a non-negotiable in my life. Like, everything can fall away, but as long as I'm doing something artistic, and I say it in air quotes, like creative, that is how I can stay grounded. That is how I can show up in my life. If I'm cranky, in a bad mood, anything, it's like the first question I ask myself is, have I eaten? Because I do get hangry. And the second question is like, have I made something recently with my hands?
Yeah, it's such an underrated thing. And I love that you're saying, like, even with 2 children, even with a career, even with a business, even with a husband, you're still making time for that. Because I have said, one of my clients recently, she's moving into entrepreneurship, really scary time, but there's just a lot of pressure. And I was like, when was the last time you did anything for fun with also like zero expectation of like, I need to get better at this? For me and my husband, that's been swing dancing over the past 2 years. We've got a swing dancing performance next weekend with our like swing dancing club, and all the swingers of Sydney are coming together to like do their showcase. And yeah, it's brought so much joy to my life. And also, I don't want to become a professional. I mean, I am a trained dancer, but we're not really trying to become like really good swing dancers. Like, it's just for like fun. It's something that we wanted to do together. And that component, just doing that once a week, has brought so much lightness to my life. And I think even when I was in my master's of creative writing, that was a master's degree, it was more enjoyable than anything, like talking with people around about writing and books. Like, it was so I couldn't think of anything more delightful to do with my time than to pursue that degree. And I do find that I get into more depressive episodes when I'm not creating. Like, I know for me, like when I'm not writing creatively, sometimes I even feel like conflicted around, my career, my business. We've had these conversations like, am I fully in integrity with the direction of where my business is going? And I do have some conflict about how much I work within corporate environments, when I do think that the corporate system is, there's so much broken about it. And it's a system that I feel like damaged me very greatly. But where I feel like fully in what we call in internal family systems therapy and what I call my course is like self energy, where it's like I feel fully alive and fully myself. It is in the creative process in some way. Like it is when I'm painting or when I'm writing or when I'm dancing. I feel like there's no internal conflict or internal struggle here. It's just very pure. And like this isn't to say that not everyone thinks that they're quote unquote creative, but it doesn't need to be like artistic in any way. It could be fly fishing, like you said. And I encourage people to just find something.
And that's it. I wrote down while I was listening, like life is meant to be lived. And I know so many of us grew up hearing, and I hear people say this to my daughter, who again is about to be 6, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I think that at some point we stop asking ourselves, what makes me feel alive? What brings me joy? What is fun? Like, when was the last time you prioritized fun? And for me, when I'm asked to do something, I have to ask myself, like, is this going to be fun? And if it's not fun, most of the time I will say no. Like, I don't want to do things that are not fun. Of course, like there are certain, like doing the dishes, not fun, but I can make it fun. Like they're just like parts of my life where I want more joy, And I think about when I was asked what I wanted to be when I grew up, the answer changed many, many, many times and was all over the place. But I have this really distinct memory when I was in 8th grade of this boy in my class who made fun of me because we had to present to the class off the cuff. Like right then and there, the assignment was like, take 5 minutes, write about what you want to be when you grow up. And I got up in front of the class and I said really confidently, when I grow up, I want to be happy. And this kid sitting in the front row laughed in my face and proceeded for the rest of the school year to tell me how ridiculous this concept was. And like, clearly it's stuck with me. But now I ask myself, maybe not every single day, but pretty often, like, am I happy? What does happiness look like? What is it about being happy that matters to me? And this is not about being happy 24/7, but this is about doing things that bring me happiness. Like, what are little things, whether it's using something really beautiful, like I love fountain pens. That's an expensive hobby. Don't go down that route. But like, something that's so little that like I write my to-do list with a beautiful pen, with a beautiful color of ink, because like, even if it says like update my accounting spreadsheet for my business, it just brings me joy to see it in purple versus black. Like it's like little tiny things, but also from a hobbies perspective, I bring my kids into it. Like I sit down to paint with my daughter. When I go to cook a meal and, I try to be intentional about how we do this as a family, and like coming together for dinner is really important to us. I bring her into it. Like she sits there grating carrots and, chopping up celery, and like she takes ownership of this and she feels like she has contributed to our meal and to our family. And I hope that it's teaching her a sense of like ownership, but also that she's having fun because we've got Bad Bunny on in the background and we're like salsa dancing in between, throwing the veggies into the pan. So like, I think as moms, you are seen as somebody who is selfish if you prioritize your hobbies, if you are too fun or like are too non-traditional. And I really, really try to fight against that because our kids don't become like more attached individuals by having mothers who are constantly self-sacrificing. The science also shows like that's not good for kids, like to grow up with a mother who is super self-sacrificing. And so we live in a society that it's broken. It is not built for women. It is not built for mothers. It is not built for families. And so we try to cobble things together. But at the end of the day, if there's one thing that I can control, it is how I show up. And in order for me to show up in the way that feels good for me, it is to have a creative outlet. And if the only way I can fit it in at times is to bring my kids along and to make it work for them, well, then I'm willing to do that, even if it's for 5 minutes.
Woo, mic drop. Love it. I have a client who has had a really big career, led organizations, and a consultant right now, and, really trying to figure out her identity after motherhood. And she loves books. She's a huge reader. She's so interested in reading. We just got off a call and she met with the owners of her local bookstore to just understand a bit more of how it works. And she was like, I think I'm just going to take some casual shifts at the bookstore. And this is, make minimum wage, but it's just she wants to be and it like for the only reason that it is something that she really wants to enjoy, and she could be a casual maybe during Christmas period and talking to people about books and about what she's read and about what they would like, and she just thinks it will be so delightful. And there's no like, how can I be the best bookseller? How can it's just, I think I don't know, like I'm so fucking sick of this conversation just around optimization and like trying to be more and trying to do more. And I find myself like, really just pushing. And I'm a coach on this fucking topic, and it's still, the culture is still extremely strong in terms of that we're hardwired for productivity and we're hardwired to contribute to capitalism. We forget so much about joy and about fun and about finding like what is good in life instead of just being like, it's performance review season. I'm having a lot of conversations around performance reviews and the devastation and the elation and, of ranking someone against competencies that are likely underdeveloped anyway. We can be swept up in it, but what I like about what you're saying is like taking a step back, and it doesn't matter if you're even a mother or not, but just realizing that there is joy to be lived in life. It's not just about output.
Yeah, we're human beings. We're built to connect. We're built to create. And you don't have to be special to do those things. You just have to be willing to take a chance on looking silly for a bit of time, potentially. And I think that like we do ourselves a huge disservice if we put ourselves into a box that only limits who we are as professionals. I quit my corporate job in America, and my husband quit his, and we moved our family to Italy for a few months. And people around us, their initial response was like, that is crazy. And then they were like, but that's so on brand for you too. Like, this is just like the way that we do shit in our family. Like, Matt and I met in a dive bar. I thought I was never going to see him again. And 10 months later, I moved to Australia, and we had been in the same room like for 29 days total over the course of like those 10 months. Like, this is just our brand of living. But it is something that I feel I would be doing a disservice to especially young women if I didn't talk about the fun that I have as an individual and as a mom and as a wife, because a lot of people don't want to become mothers, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm certainly never going to be the person who says like you have to be a mom. But I think a lot of the times people say they don't want to because they see how hard it is. And because our generation has had access to social media and we can talk openly about the struggles, they're like, whoa, this sounds insane. Why would you actively want to do this? And I'm like, well, because like it's also fun. It's fun to like see my daughter lose her first tooth like 2 weeks ago, and for me to make up a story and be like, oh yeah, the tooth fairy collects these teeth to like build fairy castles. Like and to see her eyes light up, and the next day when she's brushing her teeth, she's like, I spent extra good time on this lower tooth because it's a little wobbly. Like, they just say like the funniest things, and it's just so fun to like see her collect actual garbage and be like, here, mom, I brought this for you for your junk journal. And it's like a candy wrapper that she found on the side of the road, but she's like, it's an American candy that I think you like this one, right? And like it's heartwarming, it is challenging, but like it can be so fun too. And so I just think that we keep trying to put ourselves into these boxes of like only a mom or only a professional. And the reality is like as human beings, we are so much more complex than that. And we cannot dilute ourselves down to just one aspect of our life. And so I'm really, really passionate, clearly, about just saying like, do it your own way. Like, and if the way that you think you want to do it today is different in 6 months, well, then fucking change your mind again. Who cares? Who cares? Like, I think we're always so worried about offending someone or letting someone down. And it's like, well, what if I let myself down? How disappointing would that be? Like, oh, and I know you do a lot of work around people pleasing, and I never thought I was a people pleaser until I became a mom. And I was like, oh my God, I have to say no so much more. And I have a hard time with that because I don't want anybody to think that I'm being a jerk. And the reality is, it's like, it's practice. I just practice. The longer that I've been a mother, the more confident I am in like who I am, what matters to me. I don't care about offending people. And I care so much more about living my life with integrity in a genuine way and with a whole lot of fun with people that I actually want to spend time with.
Well, I think that's it.
I think we got it. We got the clip. Oh. Well, Dre, it's been like such a pleasure. And I think that, I love the reframing of like of fun, of creativity, of keeping that top of mind. And yeah, I think it's inspired me for, this next phase of life, whatever that may be. So where can people find you if they're interested in working with you, if they're interested in your coaching? Give us all the details.
Yeah, you can find me on my website at www.andreabombino.com. I do one-on-one coaching. I work a lot with women who are trying to navigate what it looks like to be a professional or to engage in paid work while also being a mother and kind of redefining what that looks like. I also work a lot with parents as they're planning for parental leave. So what does it actually look like ahead of time? And then what does it look like to plan your return? And I work with corporates to do that as well. So really supporting managers who oftentimes have not been coached on how to support their team on preparing for leave or returning from leave. And it's a really critical time period for individuals in business to be able to actually thrive in the workplace. And so I'm really, really, really passionate about that. And so my website is the best way to find me. You could also find me on LinkedIn at Andrea Bombino and on social media under the same name as well. But it's been such a pleasure, Hannah. I mean, like, come on, this has been a long time coming. And I know that if left untapped, we would probably spend like 16 hours just like going at it.
My ideal day.
Exactly. Talk about fun, right? Like, let's just chat about the world and society. Like, that would be just my favorite thing. I saw like a bumper sticker the other day that said something along the lines of like, I don't like small talk. I only like big talk. Like, big fucking dreams and, big meaty conversations. And I'm like, if one more person at the school pickup line wants to talk to me about the weather, and I'm like, so what do you think about the plight of women that, our modern day? Like, that's how I'm going to just start responding. Cause like, I really want to know what's like going on in their mind. I don't want to talk about the weather.
I love that. I don't like small talk. I only like big talk. That's great. I need to use that. Perfect. Well, Dre, we'll link everything in the show notes as well for people to find you. But thank you so much for being on Big Fucking Dreams.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.
Big fucking dream.